Good evening and welcome to Ecisd Live. My name is Scott Muri and I'm the superintendent of Ector County Independent School District, and it is my pleasure to welcome each of you to tonight's show. We have a really interesting and unusual show for you this evening. We're going to dive deeply into the school calendar, something that many people think is pretty simple to create, pretty simple to understand. But we're going to talk about the history of the school calendar, how we create it in Ecisd, and all of the logistics, all of the laws and policies that go into the creation of the school calendar, something that we do annually. We'll also be taking your questions tonight. So if you have questions about the school calendar, we'll encourage you to use the chat feature on either Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter to submit those questions, and we'll be looking at those throughout the evening and responding to your questions. We want to start, however, with just a couple of words about the school district. Some of you may have read a recent article that was published about Ecisd. Specifically, it was about the fact that we are not going back to normal. Sounds kind of unusual. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and I think that many of us feel we'd kind of like to go back to normal, a place that was pretty comfortable for all of us. But as a school system, we have learned a lot during the pandemic. And some of the things that we've learned are going to help us be better as a school district, while some of the things that we're learning, we may not want to continue. And so we have decided as a school system that we're not returning. We don't want to go back where we were. We are going to move forward and be a better school district because of it. So what do we mean by that? A couple of examples. One would be technology. We learned during the pandemic that many of the families in Ecisd don't have access to high quality broadband in their home. Basically, they don't have the internet in their home, or the internet that they do have is unreliable. Maybe it's too expensive, and we have to do better. So we've spent a lot of energy over the last several months working with various companies and philanthropic organizations to provide high-speed, high-quality broadband to our community. Even SpaceX is one of the partners that we brought to the table to provide high-quality broadband to our families. And that is something that we want to continue to do. We don't want to go back to a time in which some of our families and some of our students did not have access to broadband. We're in a much better place today. Another example would be the technology. Ecisd was at a place in which some of our children had access to technology while other children did not. But today in Ecisd, we've purchased 37,000 brand new devices for our students. So today in Ecisd, every single child has a brand new device, either an iPad or a Chromebook in their hands. In fact, I was at one of our elementary schools just this morning and saw a teacher masterfully using those tools with her students, and what was created, the learning that was happening was absolutely magnificent. It was really the teacher was the artist this morning as she was working with her students. We want every child in Ecisd to always have those opportunities, and so technology will be something that we will carry forward and continue to use. Virtual learning. During this pandemic, some of our children have experienced a virtual learning environment and they're enjoying it. They're being successful. And in fact, some of our students are actually doing better in a virtual environment than they did in a face-to-face environment. And so that is something that we want to continue. We've had many moms and dads ask us if we're going to continue virtual because they want it for their children. And so we've committed as a system, as we move forward, that that's something that we will continue to do. And again, not returning to a time that we didn't offer it. We want to move forward to a time that every child will always have access to virtual learning if it is something that they want to do. Feeding our children. We've learned during this pandemic that some of our families really struggle to provide food for their families, and it becomes difficult. We recognize that some of our children really depended upon us 5 days a week for food, but now we realize that the number that we thought is actually much larger. So many of our kids depend on us for food, and that's something we want to continue. So today in Ecisd, we feed every single child breakfast and lunch free of charge, something that we want to continue for years to come. So again, we are not going back as a school district to where we were. We've learned a lot during this pandemic, a lot of things that will make us a better organization, much better at serving the needs of our children, their academic needs, their social needs, their emotional needs. We will do a better job of educating the whole child and are excited to be able to do that. So not going backwards. It's all about moving forwards. Second thing I want to share with you tonight is just an announcement. Next week, we have an early release day for our children. So moms and dads, we just want to make sure you're aware that Tuesday, February 2nd is an early release day for children. They'll come to school in the morning like they always do. And then in the afternoon, right around the noon hour, kids will be dismissed for the purpose of our teachers. Our teachers this year, because again of the pandemic, they've asked for some extra time to grow and to learn. And so we want to provide that for our teachers. A well-developed teacher, a well-trained teacher provides better experiences for children. And so the investment that we will make next Tuesday in our teachers will yield better opportunities for kids. We'll be doing the same thing again in March 2nd. Will also be an early release day. So parents want to make sure you're making arrangements for your children, again, next Tuesday afternoon as they arrive home quite a bit earlier than they normally do so that we can provide some opportunities for teachers. And that is a piece that we added to our calendar this school year, particularly because of the pandemic. So speaking of calendar, that is our topic tonight. We're going to talk about the school calendar. Why does it look the way that it does? Why do we have this long gap of time in the summer? Why do we have these breaks during the year? Why do we start school when we do? Why do we finish school when we do? So all of those questions we're going to answer tonight and talk about the construction of the school calendar. And I've asked three really smart people to join me tonight, some folks that are intimately involved with the calendar that can shed some light in some of those questions. So first, I want to welcome Dr. Lilia Nagnes to the show tonight. Dr. Nagnes is the Associate Superintendent. She oversees a curriculum and instruction for Ector County Independent School District, and she is responsible for the building, the putting together of that calendar. We'll talk more about that. But welcome, Dr. Nagnes. Nice to have you with us tonight.
Thank you, sir. It is always a pleasure to be here on Ecisd Live.
Good deal. Thank you. And next, I'd like to welcome a new member of our team. Dr. Corey Seymour joined us this summer. He's an executive director for leadership and supervises a group of principals in Ecisd. So Dr. Seymour, thank you for being with us tonight. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here to speak to the people.
And you joined us this summer, most recently from where, Corey?
I came from Portland, Oregon. I came from the Portland Public Schools, which is one of the largest districts which is the largest district in the state of Oregon.
Good, but from Texas before that, right?
Right. So before that, of course, I was in South Texas, in Santa Gertrudis Independent School District, where I was the superintendent.
Good. So thanks for being here. Glad you joined the team. It's nice to have you. And finally tonight, the voice of the expert, the voice of our teachers. Joy Mendoza is a fourth grade teacher at Milam Elementary School. So Joy is joining us tonight. Thanks, Joy, for being here.
Hi, guys. I'm glad I'm here. I'm going to represent the teachers. It's all for you guys.
Good. Hey, Joy, I was at your school just last week. Yes. And your kids looked unusual. In fact, I was at your school earlier this week. You had a lot of kids that were they had gray hair and curlers. What was going on?
Oh, we had the 100th day of school.
Yep. You didn't dress the part tonight?
No.
Didn't want to work 100?
Yet.
There you go. It was funny. Well, I had a good time on my visit with Milam. Lots of kids celebrating the 100th day of school this year. It's amazing that we've been to school that many days this year. So I want to start tonight, Dr. Nagnes, you and I, let's talk about how we build this thing. So first, with purpose. As we think about the purpose of the school calendar, years ago, the school calendar was really designed around an agrarian society. The school year really took advantage of the need for children to be at home working on the farm with mom and dad. And so we had this long gap in the summer so that kids could tend the crops and make sure that the gardens were tended, the weeds were pulled, the rocks were removed from those gardens, and parents could pull those crops in, sell for money, and then use other crops to feed their families. And families needed a long period of time in the summer. So the school calendar was really designed around the way society worked well over 100 years ago. As many of you know, much of that hasn't changed over time. We still continue to have this large gap of time in the summer, even though I'm not sure, Dr. Nagnes, that we have many kids that work in the garden all summer long. There may be a few, but I'm not sure many kids do that today. Is that correct?
That is correct. And again, it's probably been 100 years or longer that we have followed or school calendars have followed the agrarian method. So.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So here we are today in the year 2021 and still kind of following some of those same themes. But the purpose of a school calendar is ultimately to ensure that every single child has an optimized learning experience. It's to ensure that the school day, the school month, the school year is designed around the learning needs of our children. And we still in public education have some work to do to perfect that calendar. And it has certainly evolved a little bit over time. And I even think in ECISD, we are evolving the calendar even more. So Dr. Nagnes, why don't you talk us through how do we go about building the school calendar? What are the building blocks?
Well, there are several things that we consider, and then of course there are requirements that the state of Texas requires for each academic calendar. First of all, we are a district of innovation, so that does give us some flexibility in our the start date. And because of that flexibility, we're able to leverage some flexibility there with starting. But you know, what we have seen, Dr. Muri, over the pandemic and really over summer is before the pandemic hit, we would always see summer slides, what we call a summer slide. Students regress over the summer. And so when they start, typically August, later August, we would spend a lot of time trying to remediate or get kids caught up because of that summer slide. But because we are a district of innovation and because the state of Texas now has provided us the opportunity to educate our students up to 180 days, and because of COVID, we are leveraging that opportunity to have more face time with our students. So that's really the big one. So we start knowing that we're going to educate our students with 180 days. And then we think about what the teacher contract is like. We know that teachers have 187 days on their contract. So that gives us 7 days of flexibility to take care of professional development, teacher work days, etc. And so what we do is we create a subcommittee that begins work in early November, looking at all the criteria. We start with 3 templates, a calendar template, and the committee then helps us decide on this calendar, let's look at this start date and see how we can fit in the requirements.
Dr. Nagnes, what types of people are on that committee?
So we have representatives from elementary, secondary, and secondary schools. We have administrators, we have district personnel, and of course, we always lean into our district, our continuous improvement team to look and give us that final approval on the calendar that we're actually going to take to the board. So that district improvement, continuous improvement team really has the final say on what calendar we're going to take to the board. Okay, all right, good. And that district improvement team, again, what types of people serve on that committee? It's mainly teachers. We actually met today. Yes. Okay, yep. We have teachers from all campuses represented. All right, good, okay. There's some, you mentioned some legal requirements and let me talk about the 180 days. Does the state of Texas require that kids go to school for 180 days? No, sir. That is an option that is actually new through House Bill 3. We are now allowed to have 180 days for instruction, which then qualifies our district to be funded by the state of Texas for our pre-K-5 summer learning experiences. Sure. Yeah. I think that, and that's important. That's actually
a lot of money. So because we are going to school for 180 days, that automatically qualifies us for a piece of legislation that passed in 2019. And it's in House Bill 3, but it's called the Extended School Year Opportunity. And ECISD, we're one, actually the few school districts in Texas that's going to take advantage of that. So the state of Texas is funding the education of our kids this summer. And many of our neighbors will not have that same opportunity that our kids will have. And then you mentioned this other thing called Summer Slide. Talk about that for just a minute.
So, any teacher really can tell you that a lot of time is spent on review when children start school, a new academic year. And, that's always been, research shows that students can slide anywhere from 2 to 3 months during the summer. That's the summer slide.
Hey, Joy, speaking of teacher, let me ask her about that, about Summer Slide. Ms. Mendoza, again, a fourth grade teacher at Milam Elementary School. So when you welcome your fourth graders in at the beginning of the year, do you notice the Summer Slide at all?
Oh, definitely. Whenever they come in, we have to get them back into the routine. Oh, sorry about that. We have to get them back into the routine. We have to kind of drag back to the end of the last year, maybe even months before they let out, just come back up, review them to where they were at. It's pretty hard. And I mean, with every good thing, because everybody loves summer vacation, comes the cost, and that is the cost of that vacation. So this is going to help that summer slide not be so
dramatic. Your research says, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I'll be curious to see if you see it with your students. Research says that the Summer Slide actually costs our kids 2.3 months of learning. So basically, as a teacher, you're spending August, September, and October just catching kids up from what they lost the prior year. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. And some of it, up a book, or they actually regress even further from where they were.
That's interesting. So for those kids that do nothing over the summer, maybe they're television watchers and nothing more, the loss is even more significant. That's amazing to think about. You'd think that kids would pick up where they left off, but it just isn't the case. So perhaps the more we can close the gap between the end of the school year and the beginning of the school year, the less learning loss you'll see.
Yes, and the more growth we're going to see. We've lost a lot these past few months. Last year was detrimental, but by doing this, we can catch up, almost fast forward.
So I'm going to be curious this year to see, because we have that summer learning opportunity for kids, what your fourth graders are like next year. If they'll, as third graders going through the summer, if they experience the loss, or if they continue, if they maintain, and then what you would be able to do as a fourth grade teacher if there's no loss. Imagine.
Oh gosh, we could just take them on.
There you go. Exactly. You could create fourth and fifth graders in the same year, perhaps. There you go. All right. No, good stuff. Dr. Seymour, from a leadership perspective, we've talked centrally about the summer slide and now the COVID slide. What are your thoughts on the summer learning experience for kids in ECISD?
I think that it's an important opportunity for our kids to be able to take advantage of what we're going to offer them this summer. One of the wonderful things I think about our summer program and what we're doing is they're half days. So but it continues that education, and then also provides them with a break at the same time. But it also allows us to really focus on the weaknesses or the areas that kids need to work on. But I know this year we're doing some other great things about that. We even some enrichment for those kids that may not have those same areas. So I'm really excited about the opportunity that we're going to be able to provide for our students. And as a parent, I'm not only as a leader, but as a parent as well, with multiple children in the program, I'm so looking forward to take advantage of what we're going to be able to provide.
Yep. So because, kind of going back to the beginning, because we've added a 180-day school year, ECISD kids now have this opportunity in the summer, and that's really good for them. And you also mentioned acceleration. So not only is it to take care of some of the learning loss, but also opportunities to accelerate kids and enrich kids. So there are opportunities for everybody this summer. Absolutely.
And when we look at, not only, we're looking on every single level. So we have special programs that we developed for our elementary. We have special things that we developed for our middle school. And we have some unique things that we're going to look at for our high schools students also, and students that are transitioning from from 5th to 6th and from 8th to 9th. You're going to see some different things that you've probably seen before.
Good. No, that's I think pretty exciting school calendar. So back to you, Dr. Nagnes. All right, let's put some of these pieces together. We've said our kids have to go to school for 180 days, and that is a decision we've made locally so that we could have the summer experience. The teacher contract is 187 days, so we've got to make sure that we have a calendar that reflects the 187 work days that our teachers need in the contract. But there are other factors that also go into the making of the contract, Dr. Nagnes. So a lot of local preferences, as you look at school calendars across the country, they vary widely. I remember growing up as a young child, I grew up in the Northeast in Rhode Island, and we never went to school before Labor Day. We always started school in September, and that was simply something that we did. And then when I moved to the South, it was very different. So talk about some of those other factors, the more localized factors that influence the creation of the calendar.
Yes, so we really look at historical and what the community expects from our academic calendar. Mm-hmm. And one of those expectations really is a holiday between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. Some folks call October Shocktober if we don't have a break. And so our community does expect a holiday between Labor Day and Thanksgiving. We also know that our students and teachers like to have a full week break for Thanksgiving. And so we honor that with all the choices and all the calendars that our community and our staff looked at. We included a full week off at Thanksgiving and 2 weeks at Christmas.
In fact, Dr. Nagnes, I remember last year when I came in and we asked our parents for the first time we asked for feedback from our parents. One of the comments, I shouldn't say one comment, there were a lot of comments about having a full week for Thanksgiving. So clearly that's something our community wants.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So we're very happy to honor those expectations, those desires and what our community needs. Our teachers also, of course, the 2 weeks at Christmas, that's a given. But they also, to close out that first semester, there's a lot of paperwork that teachers need to complete. And so we do provide a records day at the end of the first semester and a records day at the end of the second semester or the last day of school. Those 2 records days are actually part of those 7 extra days on the teacher contract. So
okay, I'm going to stop you there. I'm going to stop you there, Dr. Nagnes, and actually ask Joy to kind of speak to records days. Joy, tell me about records day as a teacher. Do you have a lot of paperwork? Are those days necessary? Can't we just eliminate those?
Definitely not.
Okay. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if you could see me or not.
We can. Yeah. So tell us about what do you do? What does a teacher do on a records day? What does that mean for you?
Records day mean that we go through all their files. We do tons of paperwork. We catch up. It's all about the planning and getting ready for the next one. It's the big planning. On our PD days, we look at as groups, we look at the test results. We look at what kind of things we need to be doing. What is this teacher doing that I'm not doing? I mean, they're so effective. We have to have them. And gosh, that's why the early release days are going to help so much.
So I think that's one of the things sometimes we hear from parents is not understanding exactly why, what does a teacher do? What does an administrator do when kids are not there? And so I think your explanation is important. There's a lot of work that you as a teacher have to do when your students are not present. So those days are important to you.
Most definitely. Without, we'd be working throughout the night, all day, every day.
Yeah, that we don't want that. In fact, for many of you, that probably happens already, especially in the middle of this pandemic. So those days are important to you. Good. All right, Dr. Nagnes, so we've got the records days. Keep going. What other localized factors come into practice here?
Okay, well, we also included a professional day at the first day in January, or January the 3rd this coming year, because teachers need that professional day to gear up for that second semester, for the spring semester. So that's another thing that we include. And our community likes to finish school before Memorial Day weekend. And so we start from Memorial Day, and then we build the calendar backwards from that. And then that helps us determine when our start days are going to be, and holidays and such.
My nieces live in the state of Wisconsin, and school doesn't end until the end of June for them, partly because they start late and partly because of all the snow days that they have during the year. And so they would love to finish before Memorial Day as well, but that's not an option. And I'm glad, again, hearing that from our community here, that's important. And so we really try to ensure that school starts, in August and then ends before Memorial Day. Good. All right.
Speaking of snow, sir, we do have to, as a requirement, have 2 bad weather days built into our academic calendar.
Yep. And we experienced that last year. We had to use some of those snow days last year, and we have we've been close this year as well to using more than just one. Hopefully we won't have to do that again, but we'll see. So yes, bad weather days are built in. Dr. Seymour, you talked earlier about a new addition to our calendar this year, and that is a transition of some students into the year. Tell us a little bit more about that. That's a new piece.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things with the calendar committee that the people that are involved and listen to those in the community and the leaders on the campuses, we found out that, hey, 2 of the toughest transitions in school is usually our 5th graders that are going into the 6th grade and those 8th graders that are going into the 9th grade. So all of a sudden, hey, I'm this big fish on campus and I am going to a middle school or I'm going to a high school. And there are just certain needs, the differences, because there are definitely going to be big differences culturally and just how things are done. And those days are going to give those students a great opportunity to get a full understanding of the expectations of them as they move forward, opportunity to connect with some of the teachers there and just to understand that process. So we're in a process of continuing to build that, listening to some of the suggestions, not only from our teachers, not only from our administration, but we're also listening to our students and saying, hey, students that have experiences before, hey, what was your experience like transitioning and listening to what they have to say? And maybe some of the things from our other kids who haven't transitioned yet, but some concerns that they may have before doing that. So this is giving us an opportunity to gather that information and providing them with the support that they're going to need to put them in a better position when they transition.
So I think, one of the things we learned of the pandemic kind of goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. We are not going back, we're moving forward. And one thing we learned during the pandemic is the phase-in process works really well when it's done well. And so we're phasing in our 6th graders next year and phasing in our 9th graders, to Dr. Seymour's point, to make sure that their transition from elementary to middle and then from middle to high is much more effective. We saw the phase-in process work this year because of the pandemic, and next year we're really targeting phase-in to help kids transition, and in the hopes that our 6th graders and 9th graders will be better adjusted and more successful in those grade levels. So I'm excited about that. And I know our schools, are the schools working on some plans, Dr. Seymour?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The schools, as a matter of fact, we actually have a transition team that's made up from individuals from schools to continue to receive ideas from those schools of what to do. Good.
All right. No, that's good. I want to switch back to Dr. Nagnes for just a minute about professional development. We talked a little bit about professional development days. But in our calendar, they're positioned throughout the year. Would you talk about why we place, Dr. Nagnes, the different teacher professional development days where we do?
Yes, sir. So every day really has a purpose. We know that at the beginning in August, teachers need to have a work day. And so typically one of the professional development days is actually a teacher work day where they do not attend meetings. They are in their classroom getting all their materials, their lesson plans, everything ready for the first day of school. For our new calendar, we do have the opportunity to work with our teachers 3 days before. So our first professional development day will be August the 4th, and that will be a combination of the convocation and campus, a campus day where the principals can really work with their teachers, welcome their teachers to the team. That is such an important culture building thing that schools need. And then the district combines the 2 other days where we split elementary district professional development, while secondary has a campus day, and then we flip that on those 2 other days on Thursday and Friday.
I'm going to invite Joy into this conversation. Joy is a teacher. I mean, you went to college, you have a college degree, you were educated to be a teacher. Why do you need more professional development?
For this, you always never stop learning. I've been teaching for like 13 years now, and every single year you learn something new. The technology these days, I mean, we were thrown into this whenever the pandemic hit, and I mean, I've learned so much, and without the PD, but I was having to learn on my own. And then when PD came in, oh my goodness, it made things so much easier. It's always, the world is always changing. Our kids have new needs, and we really have to step up and learn and keep on learning. And those PD days really provide that time for us.
No, I think you've hit on it. It's the learning piece. You know, we are learners, and the world is constantly evolving, constantly changing. I remember as a kid, I used to think, you know, well, being a teacher is easy because you do the same thing every year. You know, you just kind of dust off that same lesson plan and implement it. And that's just not the reality. Kids are different. The world is different. The content even evolves. The curriculum changes. And so you as a teacher have to continue to grow and learn. And so these opportunities are critical for you. Absolutely. You mentioned, Joy, a little bit earlier, you talked about collaboration. Do you spend a lot of time in these opportunities working with your teachers? Is this by yourself, or your colleagues, I'm sorry, by yourself? What does professional development look like for you on your campus?
Well, professional development is whenever we actually get together, not just with our grade level teachers, but with other grades, and sometimes teachers around the whole district. You know, some campuses do some things the other way. We do things a different way, and it's nice to collaborate and find out, how are you doing things? And oh my goodness, look how great your kids are doing, and they're really having fun, and to bring that into our campus. So, I mean, the collaboration is key, and there's things out there that we've never even seen.
Sure.
And when we together and collaborate, it's like, oh, wow, never even thought about using it that way.
Good. Dr. Seymour, from a leadership perspective, you know, on these opportunities for teachers to learn, it's also an opportunity for principals and assistant principals to engage in the process. Tell me about professional development from a leadership perspective. How do we develop principals and assistant principals and others on these days? Or what's the role of those people on these days?
Well, I think it is multifold. First of all, instructionally, because a person is a principal or in a leadership position, they still have to continue to learn alongside with the teachers. As things continue to evolve, they have to continue their learning as well, because as being instructional leaders of your campus, you have to be even more aware of what's going on and understand what's going on to provide the extra support that is needed for your teachers. But also individually, you get new people on campus, different things that are coming into play. Just thinking about the aspects of social emotional learning, which is becoming more and more heard of here in the South, and something because of the pandemic, some of the things that we're seeing that our kids are dealing with, and our teachers. So getting the opportunity to understand more about the needs of the teachers and the students that are on your campus, those things are very important. So building those things, and then every year there are new laws, new policies, new changes that come about, and those leaders have to understand and know those things as well, so they can better support their schools.
Yeah, good. All right. So that is a critical piece of the school calendar, is the development of our staff, making sure that every staff member in ECISD is growing and learning and being developed, so that we can educate our students more effectively when our kids are on our campuses. So Dr. Nagnes, back to you in the development. So now we've got these legal requirements of the calendar. It has to be a certain amount of days, and there are teacher contract components. There are all these different local components. The fact that we want 1 week at Thanksgiving and 2 weeks at Christmas, and we want to start, at a time, and we want to end. So we once the committee put the calendar together, they solicited some feedback. And talk about that, because we've added a new layer of feedback that we haven't done before. Actually, we started it last year, but it was kind of new for us. So tell us about the feedback that we gather.
Yes. So the calendar committee actually creates 3 different calendars. They'll have different start dates. There'll be some differences. And so last year, we actually started the process of not just sharing those 3 calendars and asking staff, ECISD staff, to provide us feedback, but our communications department shares it with the community. And we are now asking our community, we've asked our community to provide feedback on what they see and what they like, and just really their thinking on the 3 choices that they have in front of them.
Good. And I think you have some numbers. How many members, how many parents, how many members of the community provided input this year on the calendar?
So on the calendars, we had 307 views on all 3 of the calendars, and we had 222 comments.
That's great. So 307 parents or community members looked at the calendar, and 222 of them commented, either told us things they liked or things they would like to change, or told us what preference was. What about staff? How many staff members took a look at the calendar?
We had 667 staff members look and 482 comments.
Wow, that's a lot. So a lot of feedback on the 3 calendar options. And I think we also asked them, kind of which calendar they preferred, and what was their preference, A, B, or C?
They chose C.
So calendar C was their preference. And so what's the next step? Once we kind of took this to our district improvement committee, they talked about C. C's the recommendation from our community. What's the next step?
So after today, we took it to our district committee, shared it with them. We will now include it on the agenda for the February board meeting, and our board will officially vote to approve calendar C as our academic calendar for the next year.
Good. All right. So approval coming up, and then we'll publish, and everybody will know they can, kind of build their year, if you will, around the calendar. So now I have some questions. Part of the feedback that we got from families and from our staff members consisted of questions. And so, in fact, we have questions coming in on the chat. So anybody watching tonight, you're welcome to use the chat feature to submit your questions about the calendar, and we'll begin to respond to some of those. So the first one kind of coming to you, Dr. Nagnes, and it's about start date. Why do we start in early August or the middle of August, and why can't we start after Labor Day?
Well, because first of all, our community likes to end school before Memorial Day. So as I said, we put that as our end point, and then we work backwards.
So to stop you, if we started school after Labor Day, when would we get out of school?
Oh, way deep into June.
Yeah, so it'd be towards the end of June. And I'm not sure that would be too popular, but it's certainly something we could do if that's what the community wants. Yep. But we have to have those 180 days. And so the art is to try to figure out how to put all of those days and the vacations and the professional development days in between, the middle of August and Memorial Day.
Yes,
Yep.
sir.
Joy, a question for you. One of the questions that we're getting is about 180 days. Isn't 170 enough, or 160 or 150?
You would say that it is, but when it comes down to it, we're really trying to close that summer slide. And right now, our kids, they really need the extra time. They're just not getting it whenever the pandemic hit. It was just, I think everybody was in a panic. Parents weren't ready. Teachers weren't ready. They lost time. They lost valuable learning. It's just, we need that extra time. That's why we're going to the 180 days. Plus, by going to the 180 days, we can also provide the summer school or the summer incentive and the pre-K learning.
Yep. So we could go to school for less than 180, but what we sacrifice is the learning of our children. We sacrifice, to your point, the summer experience that would go away because it wouldn't be funded by the Texas Education Agency. And then when you look at the academic situation of our students, we're in an academic crisis that has been magnified by the pandemic. And so we have got to have academic time with our children because they are woefully behind their peers across the state of Texas. And so we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to take time to do that. Corey, you're new to the system. So your thoughts on 180, 170, 160?
Well, I think that those additional days allows us to, it allows variety. So additional days allows us to try different things and provide different types of instruction for our students. So I think that's so important. If you look at research-wise, what an additional day brings, especially for those in our community, how much extra learning comes in with those additional days. Now, this is also coupled with good instruction that's happening with that, a good environment that's happening with that. But when you take all those two elements and you add additional days on top of that, our students really truly benefit. And think about this. We said 160, we talked about 170, but just think about an extra 10 to 20 days that our students have an opportunity to learn. So we're not just looking at our students growing 1 year, we're looking at our students growing over and beyond the 1 year of growth that is expected to give our students the best possible advantage that they can get. Because they're not just competing for kids here, but globally. Right. And we want to put our students in the best possible position so that they can be competitive.
That's exactly right. Yeah, another piece, Joy kind of alluded to this earlier, the summer slide is real. The longer that summer gap is, the bigger the slide. And, so Joy's a fourth grade teacher, and to think about starting to teach fourth grade content in October, because you're spending the first 2.5 months catching kids up because of the summer slide, that's something that we need to try to eliminate. Dr. Nagnes, early release days, coming to you for this one. So we added 2 early release days this year. Why did we add those?
Well, we heard the teachers loud and clear. When we shifted to 180 days, we lost up to 11 professional development days because we used to serve kids for 169 days, but the teacher contract was 187. And especially with the pandemic, we heard teachers loud and clear saying, we need that additional time for planning. We need support using our technology devices. We need support on using some of the new technology applications that we're asking them to use, etc. And so we heard that loud and clear. And so the state of Texas actually allows us to get a day of funding and gives us credit for holding school if we educate our kids for 4 hours minimum, and then we can send the children home and use the rest of the time to develop our teachers, work with our teachers.
Yep. Excellent. And that, again, I think it's the voice, it's listening. And our teachers were pretty clear, hey, we need more time. And so this year, in the 2021 calendar, we added 2 days. Again, one coming up next Tuesday, February 2nd, and then another one on March 2nd, specifically because our teachers said we need time to be developed. We need time to grow and learn and work with our colleagues. And then next year, we've added them as well. In fact, even more of them next year, again, in response to the needs of our teachers, just making sure they have those opportunities to learn and enjoy. You know, you kind of explained that to us tonight, how important it is that you have that opportunity as a teacher to grow and to learn and to be developed, even though you have a college degree already. That kind of continuous learning is pretty important. Why, though, Dr. Nagnes, in the middle of the week? Why not on a Friday?
Well, because historically, when we do have early release days, our student attendance really is affected in a negative way. And so what's the point of having an early release day and still try to work with our students for 4 hours? It's not going to happen if they don't come to school.
Yeah. And so putting it in the middle of the week kind of prevents that opportunity from happening. And so that's wise decision-making to make sure that our kids are still there. I've got another question I'm looking at. It's about our Joy. I'm going to come to you with this one. Our parents have asked about virtual learning next year, and will it continue? So I'll answer the question and say yes. Virtual learning will be a part of Ecisd, not just next year, but from now on. Joy, what is your reaction to that from a teacher perspective, knowing that kids will have access to that in the future?
I mean, honestly, it's terrifying because right now, you know, we're working with what we have, the technology we have. We're still kind of lagging as far as how to get this set up to show, because a lot of us are teaching with the students in the class as well as online. So we're still needing to catch up on the best ways to do that. And we're doing trial and error. I know that some of the schools, I know Milam for one, is going to be piloting the virtual school. So still have this as option.
So what are your thoughts on that? So full-time, you'll have a full-time teacher in full-time virtual. Your thoughts?
You know, I think that's the way to go. At the beginning of the year, we had so many few students in the class that we actually rotated, and we had one class that was just virtual. And, you know, it was so nice because, I mean, it was hard doing it, period, because it was something new. But it was nice to be able to tell them to do it one way without saying, okay, the kids in the class do it this way, the kids online need to do it this way. You know, we waste time going back and forth. But whenever it was just one-on-one and you were able to talk to your virtual kids, utilize the breakout rooms so they can collaborate, you know, it was a lot better.
Yep. No, good. And one of the things we've learned this year is it's important for our kids, but we have to do it the right way. Kids need to have that positive experience. And so we appreciate the teachers and families that are engaging in that process, and glad they asked the question so that we can continue to offer that in the future. Another one is about, does ECISD and MISD share the same spring break? And if we don't, why not? Dr. Nagnes, can you speak to that one?
Well, that's a great question. Because we partner so closely with Odessa College, Ector County ISD syncs our spring break with the Odessa College calendar, because we have so many students enrolled in dual credit, we have early college, high schools, etc.
Yep. So I think, you know, there's a community opportunity. So perhaps if the region, you know, could share the same spring break, but I think to your point, it's not just about ISDs, it's also about the community colleges and colleges, because many of our kids, in fact, we have hundreds of kids involved in Odessa College, and so we need to coordinate with them. So that's pretty critical. I'm not sure everybody understands that we do coordinate locally with the various academic institutions, and sometimes it makes it difficult to coordinate with other school districts. Because we would all literally have to be on the same page, but an opportunity for the future. All right, you guys, I want to say thank you to the three of you that are not only calendar experts, but learning experts. the reason we put a school calendar together is to help our kids learn. It's to maximize the learning process for children. As Joy said tonight, the summer slide is real. COVID slide, we now understand, is real. And so if we can design a calendar that limits as much as possible that summer slide, I think that's healthy for our kids. And as a fourth grade teacher, I know that you would appreciate that, Joy, definitely. And Dr. Seymour, thank you for joining us tonight. Professional development and the design of this, thank you for sharing the phase-in process. We saw some excitement. I think there are a lot of excited people right now thinking about our 6th graders and 9th graders and what that phase-in process means for them. So continue to lead the development of that work, and I can't wait for our kids to have that experience next year. And then Dr. Nagnes, thank you for organizing the creation of this very important part of the work that we do, the annual calendar. We appreciate it. So again, thank all 3 of you for joining us. And thank you, moms and dads. Thank you for allowing us the privilege of serving your children every day. Thank you for providing feedback. The over 300 of you that viewed the calendar and gave us feedback. We appreciate that, and also appreciate your continued engagement in the work that we do to make sure that we are educating every child in ECISD to the very best of our ability. Thank you and have a good night.